Welcome to Adventures in Alchemy, a podcast filled with witchy tips and true stories to inspire your magical life. I am Michelle Martin Dobbins, the creator of Daily Alchemy and the Adventures in Alchemy podcast. This podcast is supported by the Daily Alchemy Premium Members Lab. I don't run a Patreon, so I keep membership at a very economical $11.11 a month. For that, you not only help sponsor this podcast, but you will receive access to 14 alchemy courses, and we add a new course each quarter, access to Reiki Level 1, 2, and Master's training and distance attunements, plus a library of audio distance Reiki healings, monthly alchemical experiments, PDFs of all my books and planners, and 15% off of everything else I sell. Also, there's a members-only Facebook group, so we can chat amongst ourselves in a private community. So when you join, I do ask that you commit to 3 months, since you are able to access and download all of the content immediately. It's $33.33 for the first 3 months, and then $11.11 every month after. I am so grateful to all the premium members who support my work, and I'd love to have you as a premium member too. If you're not already one, you can go to DAPM Lab, that stands for Daily Alchemy Premium Members Lab, dapmlab.com to check it out, or there'll be a link in the show notes. Now, on with the show, and may it be a blessing to all who listen. Hey there, it is Michelle, and this episode we are going to be talking about 4 steps to creating a magical household. Before I dive too deeply in, there are just a couple of things that I want to say. And one is that if you noticed my apps since last week, I did say when I rebooted the podcast that I was giving myself grace to do it slowly. And then I somehow evolved into having an every Tuesday episode, which I really liked. And I was sad to miss last week, but many of you do know my stepson passed away last week. He died from a drug overdose. He'd been battling addiction for a long time. So it's been a hard time for us here in the Dobbins household, but the magical aspects of our household have been really helpful to us, along with the mundane aspects of him. My stepson Kyle was able to donate his organs. And so that's been a blessing for us. Through the pain, it has really helped us to know that part of him is going to live on. So, and now I'll talk maybe a little bit when we get into like how having a magical household can help you with grieving. But grieving is just like everything else. There are the mundane parts that we have to deal with life. The second is, you may remember a while back I had an episode, and I will try to find it and link it, on the power of words and the magic of language. And one of the people that I had listened to in regards to that, and I still think she's fabulous. And of course, I can't find her name, but I will find the episode. My brain is I'm not fully brain resourced right now. But she talked about different words and how like the way they sound can really impact our mind, our subconscious. And one word that she did not like, I think it was her anyway, but someone had kind of let me into this path of the word bless being like be less. And I was like, oh, I don't like that. So I had tried to switch and use the word charm much more than the word bless. And so now I'm finding someone actually shared in another group that I'm in, and I was so thrilled. And I think she's going to be coming on the podcast soon to share her magical life stories. And anyway, she shared that she had uncovered that the word bless comes from the Old English, and I will murder this, but it's like bloodsian, blessian, blestian, from blood, i.e. means to mark with blood or to consecrate. And I was like, okay, I'm feeling a whole lot better about the word bless, which is good because I could not stop saying it. As much as I tried to transition, it was like my brain was like, no. So that is a word I've like, you know what, I'm going to go with that meaning. That meaning feels really lovely to me. And Yeah. So I'm back to blessing. Okay. But on with the show, right? How to have a magical household. And I do apologize if I slip into this strange British accent that doesn't even sound British. Lately, my family and I don't know. It's just been a little running thing that we've been doing for some reason. I don't know if Kyle's mother was British, as well as one of the nurses at the hospital who was so kind. So their accent is just reverberating in my head lately. But the four steps to create a magical household. So the first one is to decide, right? Decide to have a magical household. That's like the most important thing. We live in a world where we have ignored the fact that our world is enchanted and there is more to the world than meets the eye. If you're listening to this podcast, you've probably experienced that. And even if you're not, you've probably experienced that, whether or not you've allowed that experience to fully touch you, right? But there are synchronicities abound, so many beautiful synchronicities in life, even in painful things. For me, with my stepson, when we found out where his organs were going, that like his liver was going to be in the city with his mom, and his heart was going to be in the city with his two beautiful daughters. And his lungs went to the hospital where my cousin had a lung transplant. So for us, it was just like signs from the divine that everything was going to be all right and that it was all happening in a perfect way. So, and that's like for me a big thing, but I'm sure you guys have the same experiences where I do, where there's so many little mundane things that happen in your day that are synchronistic. And that's just a part of choosing to live like a magical life, a part of choosing to realize that there are more energies and more spirits and more beings in our world at play than what we see with our eyes. So you make that decision to have a magical household, and that's like the most important part of creating a magical household, and just actually stepping into and realizing that your home has a life of its own too, an energy of its own. For me, like, I'm not real good at visualizing things. Occasionally, I hear words whispered in my ears, but for me, I'm much more of a feeling person, and it's very clear to me. Like, I always feel the energy of our household, and I know when something's amiss. And like, if one of my children spends the night away from home, I can feel that shift in energy, like their energy is not present. And there's took me a bit to get used to my daughter being off at college because I missed her energy signature in the mix. And you may have different ways that you connect in with yours, but just being aware, deciding that you're going to have a magical household and deciding to be aware, however that works for you, of, the other energies present and how there is an actual vibration energy signature of your house. And if it doesn't feel good, you can do things to shift it and change it and make it feel delightful and welcoming and delicious to you because you live there. So, of course, you would want it to be that way, right? I'm going to put a link in the show notes to a book. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about it, but I am going to put it there for any of you who are interested. It's called Spirit of the Home by Jane Alexander, How to Make Your Home a Sanctuary. And I think it's a really good book. It does go a bit into feng shui, and I'm also quite a fan of feng shui myself. I feel like it's a really nice way to manipulate the energy in your house. I don't know if that's a good word, but to create the energy that you want in your house. But she even talks about talking to your home and just, I love how, some obviously this was more for not for wealthier people, but a lot of wealthier people named their homes. And I am big on like naming things, cars and homes and whatnot. And so that might be something to consider as a first step if you're like really wanting to have a magical household, is to give your home a name. And even if it's a temporary home, like you're in an apartment and stuff, you can still do that. Your apartment can be called Everly Manor if you want, or whatever feels, it could be called George, whatever feels good and right to you and tap in your intuition. Okay, so step one, decide. And step two is the cleanse and protect. So I kind of put cleanse and protect in together. There's so many things that you can do to cleanse and protect your home. And I guess starting out, one thing that I do like is the feng shui. And, really, especially when you're working with altars and things like that, you want your house, you definitely want your altar space to be clean. The cleanliness is next to godliness. It's true. It doesn't have to be like sanitized like a hospital room, but it can be, but you definitely want to keep the clutter to a minimum. You want to keep it tidy because I feel like, but I think others would concur that the energy level on a clean space, a relatively clean space, and a relatively decluttered space is going to feel so much better to you. And, the spirits that you want hanging around, benevolent, healing, helping ancestors, land spirits, home spirits, they're going to be more content too. A book that I recommend, I love, I pull it off the shelf multiple times a year for usually actually about this time of year, because right as I'm recording this is just a couple days after Imbolc and St. Bridget's Day, or Candlemas, which is when we start looking for spring to be popping up soon. And so people sometimes like to start their spring cleaning at this time of the year. So it's a lovely time to kind of dive in and do some decluttering and cleaning. And one of my favorite books related to feng shui is Clear Your Clutter with Feng Shui by Karen Kingston. It's a short little read, but it's so very good and practical. It's not, like for me, some aspects of feng shui are really more advanced than I want, but I work with the basics, and this one is a really, really good basic way to raise that vibration in your house. And then there are other things that I like to look at, especially this time of year is a great time to do a blessing of the four corners in your house. And you can do that lots of different ways. You can put, just go around. Usually, if I'm going to do something like that, I will start with a floor wash on all the floors that can be washed. And then I will like kind of sprinkle it. And a floor wash, it's just the water that you're going to mop your floor with, but you can buy special floor washes at the Botanicas, or you can create your own, just putting in certain herbs and essential oils to, if you're wanting to bring in money or peace or connection or love or whatever, you can specify specific oils for that. Florida water is always great for clearing, cleansing, getting rid of negativity. Also, I've heard of people blessing the four corners and actually putting jars of like salt and lavender and different things in the four corners of the house. So if you're interested in doing that, you can definitely do more of a Google search and play around. But there are different ways to do that. So in like the cleanse and protect, for me, I would do some type of cleansing type thing. Doing a house cleanup and just putting Reiki everywhere is also, or just, energetic good vibes. If you're not a Reiki practitioner, is another great thing to do. I'm a big fan of like, sprinkling a little bit of Florida water or some other oil or cologne type protective thing that I'm working with at the time. I know a lot of people, when it comes to like once everything's cleansed, you can mark your doors with Florida water. Another thing that you can do is you can get bundles of rue, or even like a Ziploc bag and put them in the four corners, or buy your door jams is really good to have as a protective mechanism. And you can also work with like just other protective herbs like tied up and hung up as a protection in your house. And I personally use have a crystal grid for my, I've taken like the four corners of my property and marked those with kind of bigger, like I'd say they're like 3-inch chunks of black tourmaline, because that's a protective crystal, but you can search and see what others are protective. Even just quartz is fine. and put those on the four corners, and then activate that with prayers and intentions and visualizations. And then always I go back to kind of reactivating that every so often, usually like full moons or like a special, like a Sabbat, like in bulk. And I know a lot of us are big on using sage in the metaphysical community, in the magical community. I at one time used a lot of sage, and I've kind of steered away from so much sage, just especially white sage that's been over harvested. And a lot of the Native Americans use it for their ceremonies, so we don't want it to be over harvested. You can actually use just like regular kitchen sage if you're a big fan of sage. But I've been working, I learned, and I'll put a link. I don't know if she has it for sale right now, but she had a booklet. Becky Byers, who runs Blood and Spice Bush, she did a booklet on how to use the plants and the herbs around you for cleansing and protection. And so you can use like pines and juniper is a type of pine, but you can use a lot of different herbs and tree branches, maybe, or leaves that grow around you. Obviously, you want to be sure you don't use holly because holly is poison, but you don't have to go to the shop and buy sage bundles. You can also use incense too, incense that you like. But I find it feels nice to go get something from your neighborhood. We have a park in our neighborhood, so I don't really have trees in my yard that are good or bushes, but sometimes we'll go down to the park and get some pine and burn that. So it's nice if you can look at what's around you and just ask for permission to take some and then use that to clear out your space. There's another book that I'm going to link in the show notes too. I'm not going to talk a lot about it, but it's a really good reference and resource. And I know I've mentioned this book before, but for cleansing, protecting spaces in particular, it's called Cleaning Spaces. It's by Kai Armand. He's one of my favorite shamans, male witches out there. He is not a shaman, and male witch are two different things, but he is both, and a lot of other amazing things as well. So any of his work is highly recommended, and I will link him in the show notes. So yeah, first two steps, decide, and then the second I kind of put cleanse and protect together, because you want the space to feel good to you and to others. And you also want to kind of put up those energetic boundaries to keep people out. And that's what putting up the crystal grids or the herbs and things is about. It's like putting up a boundaries, and you might even want to set that intention with it. Like, this boundary keeps out those who aren't here for the highest good or for our benefit, or who are, just not going to bring good stuff to the table. So the third step is commune, right? If you've got a nice, clean, protected space and you've decided to interact with the metaphysical aspects of our world, then you definitely want to commune, right? You want to spend time with those who are in your energy space that are not in a physical body. And those can be crystals, and those can be plants, and those can be spirit guides and angels and demons. I know a lot of people might be a little bit scared of demons, but if you do a little bit of research, decide on your own. Some demons, the word demon may not mean what you think it means. And ancestors for sure. So there's, a lot of energy and land spirits of the land that you live in, and the spirit of your house or your home or your dwelling, whatever you call it. So one of the ways that I really like to do that is with working with altars and offerings. And so I won't go too deeply into that, but you can always start with a very, very simple altar to whoever you want to work with even just like a bottle of water every day and some incense and maybe a candle and something of the earth, a crystal perhaps, and just start there. Yeah, I'm going to put a blog post up soon, and maybe and as soon as I do, I will link it in these show notes because I know a lot of people have questions about altar work. But altar work is, is something that I resisted. I naturally created altars, but I didn't spend time there a lot, and I also didn't do offerings, and doing those are both really really changed me and like how my personality is and how I interact with the world and my own sense of discipline also. So, and you can do that from, like I said, the very very small, or you can even have like there are some places where I have whole rooms that are an altar, and that's really fun. At our office, our whole bathroom is designed to be an altar to Mars, and we painted it in a color that is pleasing to Mars. We have like shields up in there and trophies, and Mars is like a good deity for working with business, so that's why we chose to do that. But we took a lot of the symbolism of Mars and the colors and all that and incorporated it into the bathroom. So I thought I was really clever when I came up with this idea to make rooms devoted to certain deities or whatnot. And then I realized I was way, way behind the times because was traveling. I went into the Palace of Versailles. And yeah, they do that too. Like they have a room devoted to Diana, the goddess of the hunt. And I think they actually have one devoted to Mars too. But like, I remember I was taking notes furiously on my cell phone about how all of these rooms were painted colors and had decor and stuff for one particular god or goddess. So I thought it was very cool. If it wasn't my idea, at least I knew it was a pretty cool thing. So yeah, make time, however that is for you, even if it's just, I'm going to sit and meditate, light a candle and sit and meditate on the flame every day, or just kind of have a conversation with your house or with the local land spirits around you, or with your ancestors, or with your herbs that you're working with, even when you're cooking, right? But, or grow some plants in your garden and talk to the flowers, talk to your house plants. There's so much more life than just us humans, right? I mean, we know houseplants and things like that are alive, but the animist in me finds a living spirit in pretty much everything. And I enjoy communing and being grateful for those other spirits. So you get to take it as far as feels good for you. And the last step is to project, right? So, we've decided we're living in a magical household. We've cleansed and protects that household. We're communing with the other spirits. And one of the reasons we do this is so that we have the energy around us that we desire to have around us. We want an energy that makes us feel good, and also that makes the right people feel good when they come into our house, that they feel comfortable and stuff. And I know that for me, it's a work in progress and there's always ups and downs, but I've been really happy when people came into my house and they're like, the energy just feels so good in here. And I know you've experienced that before when you've gone into people's homes where the energy either feels really good to you or maybe it feels really bad to you. I judge metaphysical stores, botanicas, witchcraft stores really highly on what they feel like to me, because when I walk in, if somebody's been doing like good energetic work, it's like, we walk in and you're like, oh, it feels so nice in here. I could stay here forever. But if I walk in a shop, which I have before, and I'm like, I don't feel good in here. The energy is not nice. It's stagnant. It's not good. I'm out the door so fast. So think about this. What do you want your energy to feel like? And of course, like the top priority is to make it an energy that sustains and nourishes you and feels amazing to you. And then also to the rest of your family and the kinds of people that you want to come around your house. So one of the ways to do that is, all of the steps above are going to help that, right? But projecting the energy that you want into your house. If you practice Reiki, doing Reiki, obviously doing some of the feng shui and really setting that as intentions while you're doing that. And even if you don't do Reiki, you can kind of just sit, and when you do your meditation, feel your own energy radiate, or your own chi, your life force, and fill up your whole house. And you can also ask for any plant allies or crystals or spirits or ancestors that you work with to fill up your home with their good energy as well. It makes such a difference in how your house feels. And this can just be like incorporated really into your life. Yeah, it does take a few extra minutes to leave out offerings, or to you know, think about how things in your house are arranged and how they feel. But really, you don't have to spend a lot of money. You don't have to have a special candle. You can go to the dollar store. You can you can thrift shop at Goodwill to find things that feel good to you, or that have, I put a lot of things in my house that are symbolic to me. So they might mean nothing to somebody else other than a decoration. But the globe to me is the reminder of I travel a lot, and that is something I've chosen for myself. And I have that globe there to remind me of that. Or, as with our Mars thing, and we have like all the different shields and stuff. And to us, that's like our, good luck with business and drawing in better business. To somebody else, it might be just a decoration. I also have a lot of trophies in that room. So you can play with whatever helps you to protect that energy that's going to make your house feel really, really magical and re-enchant your world. It makes such a difference in your life because it's going to improve your mood and your productivity to be in a space that feels really, really good and energetically supportive of you. And you can do also, for those of you who work outside the home, like I've mentioned, in my office, and you might work somewhere where you can't necessarily do that, but you can do it in your own little workspace if you have an office, even if you just have a desk, even somebody who doesn't have their own space, maybe you could put a few things in your pocket to keep that magic energy around you. You can have a charm bag, a gree bag, mojo, or something to keep with you to keep that magical energy around you while you're outside of your house too. But I don't want to go too deeply into a whole nother topic. So I'm going to wrap that up and I did say a little bit about, I was going to mention about grieving and doing that. And see, for us, we have a very big ancestor altar in our house, and that's a big part of my spiritual work and my daughter's spiritual work. So as soon as I returned home, we began a process of elevating my stepson and basically preparing for him to be a part of the family altar. And, altars, they're living and breathing things, and they're kind of a physical representation of a relationship. So the altar is kind of that place where a lot of the relationship building with ancestors takes place. Or if you're working with a deity, that's where the relationship building takes place. I mean, it also takes place outside of it, but that's that special place where you're really connecting. And for us, we don't put an ancestor on the altar until, and it may go out without saying, but I don't put any pictures of living people on the ancestor altar. And also don't put pictures of people on there until either they've been elevated by doing a process. And that is the one that I like to use, is one that I will put a link in the show notes to Kai Armand's ancestor elevation. And I think he has stuff about creating an ancestor altar. I don't know if I have followed what he says, but I do think anything that he says would at least be a good starting place for someone else who wanted that. But for us, going through and doing these nightly prayers of elevation with our stepson has been really healing. And it makes me feel good to sit there and speak to him and let him know that he is remembered and that he is part of this lineage, and that, where he goes now is going to be perfect for him, and that he has healed and exalted ancestors there to help him along the way, and that we are helping him with our prayers for elevation. So having that already in place was really nice for me to feel like he's safe and he's guided and he's going to get where he needs to go, and we can be a part of helping him with that. And then once the step that we do is like 8 days. So then once we've done it and once we feel that it's complete and whether or not we need to do another round, but then he will go on the ancestor altar. So it's a nice way that he's still here. He's still a part of our life, as well as all the other ancestors. But yeah, so I would suggest, if you're doing something like that, to definitely work with doing an elevation for a particular ancestor before putting them on the altar, and or working with Daniel Foor's Ancestral Medicine. And I'll put a link to that book as well, Ancestral Medicine. And that is a process to heal a whole line. So maybe your father's father's line, or your mother's mother's line, or your mother's father's line, or your mother's father's. Anyway, those 4 lines can be healed, and that is a beautiful process too. And his book tells you how to do that. He also has live classes and workshops. Highly, highly recommend that if working with ancestors is something that you're called to. So, all right, guys, I do have several interviews in the work, and I had to reschedule a few of them due to being out of town and things with my stepson's death, but we're getting them back on the calendar. So very soon we will have lots more real people, real magic stories. And if you have one to share, I invite you to reach out to me. You can go to dailyalchemy.com. You can click on the bottom of my website to send me an email, or you can reach out to me on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. You can send me a message. I'm really interested. I love talking about how people use magic in their lives and how we re-enchant our world. And I want to share with people a broad spectrum of ways that people do that, because everybody is different. And even though there's lots of similarities and overlaps, I just would love to be able to share your story of how you incorporate magic into your daily life, and or some really cool synchronicities and stories and happenings that have happened to you, because those just inspire us all to keep magic and enchantment in our world. And I think our world is much better with it than without it. And I also believe it's there whether or not we choose to acknowledge it, but it definitely makes it nicer when we do. All right, guys. So until next time, let's be change-making descendants. Let's be future exalted ancestors, and let's live magically in the now.